Sweet cartwheeling ninja Jesus, they're huge.
I know that you've seen the internet on fire about Stellar Blade ever since the very moment it was revealed. People saying that the protagonist looks unrealistic, saying that this game was made for Gooners, and that there's no way anyone would ever buy this. And I will admit that there's definitely some truth to that, especially if you know about the company that developed this. Shift Up is known for making these kinds of games that draw people in just because of the character designs. When you start being known for ads that show more ass than gameplay, people will talk about that. But in a way, that's kind of the point. We'll dig deeper into that in a moment, but today we gotta focus on their newest game that's been taking the world by storm. Is this really a game that's worth something like Game of the Year, or is it just made for degenerates? We start off playing as Eve, a member of the 7th Airborne Squadron who was sent to Earth to deal with the Naytibas. That's the name for these grotesque looking monsters that are roaming around the world and causing nothing but chaos. If you've played the demo already, then you know that Eve's friend Taki is taken out by one of these creatures called an Alpha Naytiba. That's basically the stronger versions of these monsters that end up being the major bosses. Not long after, we get to meet people like Adam and Lily, who both help us out along our journey. Adam is the first person we meet, and he's gonna be with us most of the time, helping us out with his drone. Eventually, he helps us travel to the city where we have access to plenty of NPCs who have a decent amount of backstory. We can gain friendship levels with a few shop owners, and that opens up more dialogue options, plus even more inventory we can buy from them. Then there's a lot of side quests that also have us get closer to some NPCs and learn more about the overall world. But going back to Lily, she's really useful as an engineer who helps us out with upgrades for the drone and the exospines. She ends up being a really interesting character by the end, and we have a few quests that help grow the bond we have with her. And there's plenty more characters that have their own quests and some fairly deep backstories. People like the hairstylist and the junkyard owner always talk about their family connections, and it makes them feel more real every time you go back to them. Although, even if you just want to go to them to buy something, they're gonna load you up with a lot of dialogue before you can get to that shop. But so much of this world reveals itself just by talking with people and collecting items in the open world. You get immersed in the lore behind the war that took place here and everything that the apocalypse forced humanity to suffer through. So yeah, don't just look at Eve and think that there's nothing else deeper here. While she does look good, there's a lot more to see and you don't want to miss out on it. It's like Shift Up saw the success that Nier Automata was getting and said, we already make games with bad bitches, so let's make a Nier game with an even badder bitch. Seriously, there's a lot of elements here that give me heavy Nier vibes, from the music to the plot and even sometimes the world itself. I mentioned it when I talked about the demo, but it's hard not to see two games with a female android protagonist and a drone following her and not start to connect some dots. And I can't even be mad about all that because it still doesn't feel like it plays exactly how Nier does. It's kind of similar in a few places, yeah, but there's more of a challenge to these fights and a slightly deeper combat system. And even if they are kind of similar, I can't imagine Square Enix would even be that mad at Shift Up. You know, since they collabed for a Nikkei event and brought both 2B and A2 into that game. And hell, it might not even be too much longer before Eve gets put in there, and that'll be the first official collab between Nier and Stellar Blade. It's a win-win for fans of both series, and I'm sure that nobody is mad that these games feel almost the same. Even though a lot of my experience with this was really fun, I have to say that the one annoying thing was the map system. So as you make your way through the story, you'll unlock a lot of side missions where you need to travel back to older areas. Now, going back isn't the part that bothers me, but it's how tedious it is in some places. Especially when it comes to the areas that don't have an actual map you can look at. It's broken up into sections that you need to travel through just using the telephones. And I get why it's like that, since everything in that area was disconnected the first time we explored it. But not even letting me open up the map just felt like a really weird thing, since all I could follow was the compass on the top of the screen. So doing things like finding different fishing spots is going to be a pain in the ass when you go back to certain areas. I feel like I spent more time than I wanted just trying to track down all the quests I got from NPCs and the bulletin board. but I do like the idea of us being able to fast travel back to the quest giver as soon as we complete the objective. Now the combat here is definitely not the easiest, but it's not nearly as complicated as I expected. Square is for normal attacks, triangle for heavy, and then L1 gives you access to your main abilities. It does kinda suck that L1 is also the same button to block, and I did have some moments where I meant to parry, but ended up using an ability instead. It's not always a bad thing, but I did have some dumb deaths because I was mashing just a bit. But there weren't a lot of moments where I felt like the enemies were just way too powerful. Instead, I felt like if I was dying too often or taking too much damage, I was probably being a bit too impatient with things. It's definitely challenging, and a few bosses gave me a hard time here and there, but it's mostly that kind of challenge where you just need to get your timing proper and learn your enemy's pattern. And that's mainly because there's a ton of options that you get very early on. First, we got the skill trees where you can power up your abilities and make your combos stronger. But even on top of that, we have some options for easier dodging and easier parry windows. You don't need to choose those, of course, but it's something that can make things a bit more simple. On top of that, you have access to some skills that add more options in combat, like being able to dodge backwards when your blade flashes purple, which opens up a weak spot on your enemy that you can shoot at. It's another layer of combat that can be tough to keep up with, but it's great when you pull it off. There's also a lot of other options you can unlock later on in the skill tree, and it ends up with you being kitted out with everything you could possibly ever need. Even moving over to the options for the exospines and the gear, you can heavily customize your experience. Again, if you feel like this game is kicking your ass, you can put on gear to increase your defense, make parrying even easier, or give yourself some healing buffs when your health drops too low. But if you want the most hardcore experience possible, you can put on some gear that's high risk and high reward, like being able to deal more damage but also take more damage. Or if you're trying to get as much money and EXP as you can, there's gear for that too. It all boils down to how deep you want to explore and build connections with shop owners so you can find the right items. It creates a feedback loop where you want to do as much as you can to mold your experience, even when that includes doing stuff to make it as tough as you can. Speaking of difficulty, you can run through the whole game with no clothes on, and that will make things harder, including the gameplay. Eve's shield gauge will only appear if she's wearing clothes, but it doesn't matter what she wears exactly. If she takes off those clothes, her shields are gone and she'll take more damage from enemies. And hey, you can be a Gooner if you want, but you will have to pay the price for it. But yeah, let's talk about the costumes for a sec. So as much as people do think that this is the most Gooner bait part of Stellar Blade, I think it's like a fun collectible. You know how people normally complain that games charge you money for extra cosmetics and skins? And you hear people always saying that back in the days before DLC, all of those things were already in the game, but just unlockable or hidden secrets to be uncovered. That's basically how I see Stellar Blade's costumes. A few of them are just recolors, like with the digital deluxe bonus that's a gold version of a costume that you get pretty early on. But there's also costumes that you can get after finding and defeating secret bosses in the world. Like the bunny girl outfit that everyone just can't stop talking about can only be accessed after defeating this acid boss in the wasteland. And look, y'all can say what you want about how some of these outfits look, but it's nice having a collectible that I'm actually going to use rather than just collect trash. But yeah, you can also collect trash since Eve loves the designs on these cans for whatever reason. But what's great is that even after you finish the story, the New Game Plus adds even more outfits that you can unlock and play with. So for me, I appreciate them adding a bit more to the replay value. But let's get back into the real questions here. Is Stellar Blade just another game made for degenerates and gooners? Now the quick answer to that is no, but the long answer is something you gotta keep in mind. Shift Up is a developer who has only made mobile games before now. Mobile games that need to get your attention and have you download them and then deliver with the good gameplay to have you stick around. I've been keeping up with another one of their games, Nikke Goddess of Victory, for a bit now, and I can tell they know exactly what they're doing. Take a look at most of the characters and collabs they have and you can see the target audience they want to pull in. They might be a little predatory with the microtransactions, but I gotta say that the events and character building is pretty fun. Plus the story actually ain't bad if you look into it. Like, no lie, it doesn't look like the story is that deep, but you can tell that a lot of heart went behind it. That's a major reason why I come back to it, just so I can spend 15 minutes on dailies and just enjoy the game. The new characters are a great thing too, but the most important thing is that the game is enjoyable. Now take that same concept and move over to a big PS5 release like Stellar Blade. They used that same kind of strategy but with a much larger audience. Now you expect mobile games to be more on the horny side, but a AAA PS5 exclusive doing that is gonna get a lot more eyes on it. The eyes of both the people who want to see more and the people who are going to speak out against it. And if there's anyone I've seen who's really a gooner, it's the dudes who are signing petitions saying that the game is too censored. Because apparently some of the outfits don't exactly match what we saw in the trailers. Okay, so normally I'd be all about uncensoring things, but I'm at a total loss on this one. This is a game where they allow you to fight in a bikini with all the jiggle physics included. I deadass ended up fighting the final boss in this outfit without even thinking about it. And yet, if you really wanted to, you can stare up her skirt through the whole game. And I know you've seen enough clips of her just climbing ladders to know that. If y'all really have something to complain about after getting this amount of lewd content, I think you need to do something else rather than play this. Like, I've seen how other games get modded to hell just to add in outfits and models that are purely just for gooning. Even a game like Resident Evil where the whole goal is to just shoot monsters and zombies. I'll be scrolling on TikTok and see a live stream of someone having the most thirsty mod ever created. I mean, I'm not mad about it, but I'm just saying. Maybe at some point Sony will drop Stellar Blade on PC and those modders are going to have one hell of a time. But for what it is now, ain't no way I can believe y'all are serious about this petition. So say what you will about everything that Shift Up did with Eve as a protagonist, but it's one of the best marketing tactics I've seen in a while. I don't use Twitter that often, but for a while I would always see people talking shit about Stellar Blade. Even though they're talking shit, the next thing you know, all the arguments end up with the game trending and more people being able to get their eyes on it. Mix that in with the fact that everyone who owns a PS5 can just download the demo and try the game themselves, and we have a genius marketing strategy. Because even with Nikkei, if you want to talk shit about that and get it on trending, people will ask, well, what is this? And all they gotta do is just download the game for free and they can figure it out themselves. Love it or hate it, I gotta give props to both Sony and Shift Up for pulling through with a well-made game wrapped in a layer of sex appeal. Stellar Blade has all the makings of a great action game. A unique plot with some weird enemies to defeat, some in-depth side quests, and some really tight combat to bring it all together. Outside of the way that Eve looks and some of the costumes you can choose to wear, there's little to nothing in this game that makes it feel too horny. If you were ever concerned that things would slip into some weird stuff with tentacles and awkward fan service, then you have nothing to worry about. Now, if you want to get weird and start moving the camera in places that you shouldn't, that's all on you. But I gotta say that Stellar Blade was easily one of my favorite games of the year so far. 2024 has been stacked with some great games, and if you have a PS5, I totally recommend you give this one a try. Let me know your thoughts on Stellar Blade in the comments. Was this the kind of thing you were expecting, or did you want a different type of game? I'd love to hear what you guys think. Subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you all in the next video.